recording now. So, hey everybody, thanks so much for joining the first JavaScript New York City meetup of the year and of the new decade and of the new score. So this meetup has been going on for about 9 years now. And we've been pretty regular, pretty consistent. COVID threw a bit of a wrench in it, but even last year we managed to meet more than a handful of times. So I'm super excited about this meetup in particular. So before we jump into Marc, I just wanted to let people know that anyone that is looking for a job or is looking to hire, you can just post in chat, and people often connect that way. Just, hey, I'm looking for a front-end job, or hey, we're hiring a React developer. It's a good way to connect with people. If you want people to get in touch with you after, share some information, share your email, your tweeters, your LinkedIn, your whatever people share nowadays, your Parler. Can I say that? No. So your information, as much or as little as you want. So point of etiquette, this is being recorded. So if you are asking a question, if you are chiming in, be specific if you want, be generic if you want, just realize it is being recorded. And I think this is a great meetup topic to kick off with. Marc reached out to me a little while back, and he said that he would be super happy and stoked to give this talk to this group. So I'm hoping people will benefit. If you guys have questions during Marc's presentation, you can just go ahead and type it in chat, just kind of for notation. And when Marc's done and ready, he can jump into it. Great. So if anyone has any future things they'd like to hear about or talk about, just get in touch with me. You can reply on Meetup, or my name's pretty Googleable, so it's not that hard to find. So yeah, without further ado, I'll kick it off to Marc.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shimon. Appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me here, JavaScript New York. And whoever's got kids in the background, if you can just put yourself on mute, that'd be great. How to write a great technical resume for JavaScript NYC meetup. What I'll do is go through a presentation, about 20, 25 minutes. That's usually about all people can stay awake for during a resume writing presentation. And then take your questions for the next 20 minutes or so. So let's start heading through here. So we're Leet Resumes. We write experienced engineers' resumes for free. My background, I write the largest career advice newsletter in the United States, audience of 9 million. Write for every Monday morning. I've written Amazon #1 bestsellers on resumes and interviews. Published the famous 6-second study. Recruiters only scan your resume for 6 seconds on their first scan. Published that study 8 years ago with Ladders, my other company. Founder of IO Soho Meetup. Started that 7 years ago. So I've loved the meetup community. Been active and involved for a while in the context of the iOS engineering community. So great to be talking to the JavaScript engineering community. And past few years, I've focused on tech resumes. And again, at Leet Resumes, we do free resume talks, free resume rewrites for experienced engineers at leetresumes.com. So great technical resume for 2021. Here's what we're going to go through today. We're going to review Google's top search result and see why it's wrong. I'll show you what a great technical resume is and how it's different. We'll walk through step by step those differences and why exactly. And then I'll take your questions, your Q&A. So if that sounds like a good plan, here's the top search result for software engineer resume template on Google, and it's very wrong. And let's go through that in detail. First off, it looks great. It looks like the type of resume that is popular now in 2021. It's got color. It's got some design to it. Doesn't look like your standard resume, and that's why a lot of people gravitate towards it. But the problem is that it causes real problems for you, whether you're applying for a job or your resume is being processed for an interview. And let's go through this. So first off, the 3-column format here breaks the resume parser. When your resume is uploaded into the computer system that companies use, that's called an applicant tracking system. Each of those applicant tracking systems use one of 5 major resume parsers. And all of those resume parsers take your resume, throw out all of the formatting, convert it into a plain text file so that they can parse the words and do something interesting with the words. You wouldn't think columns would break those, but typically what happens with these columns is they're done by cells in your word processing program, and as a result, all of the dates get munged together. So the dates are all together, and then separately the titles and the experiences are together, and there's no way for the software to match those up automatically. So 3-column format, 2-column format, those break resume parsers. You should avoid them. Tabitha's email here is unclickable because she's used Blue. As a result, somebody can't click and email her immediately using from their desktop. She's showing her LinkedIn instead of a GitHub. So as a software engineer, if you got an active GitHub that presents your work well, you should use that. Your LinkedIn is a subset of your work experience. You really don't need it on your resume and technology or as a software engineer. Only mentions 5 technologies for 4 years of experience. So for a technical resume, we'd like to see, with 4 years of experience, we'd like to see 10, 12, maybe as many as 15 technologies. As you get up to 15, 20 years of experience, you'll get up towards 20, 25 technologies. Interestingly, once you get beyond 20, you start to see the number of technologies go down because your specific technical expertise isn't as important as your overall insight. But for someone with 4 years of experience, we typically like to see 10, 12 technologies that you're proficient in or competent in. Here, she only mentions 5, despite the fact that she's got 4 years experience. The visual representation of skills data, here it shows, you probably can't read it from where you're sitting, but it says adaptability, agile processes, excellent communication skills. And perhaps these mean 4 out of 5 or 5 out of 5, something of that nature. The world's resume parsers can't read those. They actually parse these as being part of the formatting of the resume and toss them out. There's no way for the parser to figure out, well, hey, what that means. As a result, this entire left-hand bar section, what it's trying to communicate, is lost in the translation. She uses a solid block of paragraph text at the top. It's 2021. People don't want to read paragraphs if they can at all avoid it. They want to be able to scan. So it's a lost opportunity to be using a solid block of paragraph text. Her professional headline is de-emphasized. We're going to talk about this quite a bit. It says Tabitha Hervanen, software engineer. Software engineer is minimized in that. That's a mistake, and it's a missed opportunity because what Tabitha's resume is, it's an advertisement for, hey, here's what you ought to hire me for. And by minimizing that, she's not letting the audience know, here's what you ought to think about me for in terms of a role. Her resume lacks numbers. We'll talk about this quite a bit. It's really important to quantify your success. Location missing, even though it's COVID times, it still is important to a lot of companies where precisely you are and how, whether you're within the geographic vicinity for when we do all go back to the office. If you're purely remote, say remote. But if you're looking in New York, say New York, New York. If you're looking in Atlanta, say Atlanta, Georgia. Because of the formatting prevalence on her resume, the achievements on Tabitha's resume have been squashed into a smaller size section, and a little bit less than 25% of the space on her resume as a result is used to show Tabitha's achievements as a software engineer. That's a mistake. A resume really is about what have you achieved? What are you capable to do for your future employer? You need to use more space than 25% to tell employers about your success. She's also used separate sections for certificates, interests, foreign languages. You don't really need to do that. That can all be put together in one section or combined even with your technology section. And we'll go through that in a bit. And if you just joined, if you just make sure that you're on mute, that'd be great. Importantly, the actual bullet points that she's using, say, built modern applications, developed services, consulted with PM, effectively just copy and pasted her job description rather than talking about what it is that she did at that job, the successes that she had. And we'll talk also about why that is a mistake. So that's Google's top search result for resume. As we go towards what is a great technical resume, first off, what's a resume? A resume is an advertisement. There's no getting around it. I know you don't want to be in the advertisement business commonly as an engineer, but it's an advertisement to your future boss that gets you an interview for a job that you can succeed in. You're advertising your capabilities to somebody who can hire you, somebody who can buy your product, buy your labor over the next few years, so that you can get that first conversation or discussion or interview for a job that you think you can be successful at. So a resume is really about generating interview requests. Your resume can't get you hired. You won't be hired off the basis of your resume alone. You're going to have to talk to somebody. You're going to have to go through that process. Resume won't negotiate you a better job offer on its own. If you really think about what is the purpose of the resume, it's really there primarily to get you interview requests, and then secondarily to be a good outline for you during an interview for what you can talk about and remember your own background. But the primary function of the resume is to generate interview requests. So what's an effective resume? A lot of times we goof this up because we don't have a lot of written documents about ourselves, and just who's ever somebody's creating some background noise there. If you just put yourself on mute, I believe it might be Sultan. Thank you. Your resume is actually not about you. I know that's how it feels, but your resume is not about you. A lot of times what we do is we end up writing, here's what it felt like to be me at this job. Here's what it felt like to go through my experience from college to my entry-level job to my next job. But that's not what a resume is about. Your resume is about what it feels like to be your boss. It's important for you to convey to them, here are the things I'm capable of. Here's what you'll experience if you decide to bring me in for an interview and then eventually hire me. So a resume is not your bio. It's not your academic CV. It doesn't list everything, every paper that you've written or all your publications. It's not an exhaustive catalog or inventory of everything you've ever done. In the same way that a product manual is different from an advertisement, your resume is different from an exhaustive catalog of everything you've done. You don't have to include everything. It's not a time to showcase your unique design talents. It's not what the audience, future bosses and hiring managers and recruiters are looking to see on your resume. It's not even a narrative. It's not the A&E biography about your life story. And it's not a mirror. It's not even necessarily the way that you think about yourself or that you like to think about yourself the most. You are a complete human being. You've got family, interests, hobbies, religion, background, bands that you love, foods that you love, etc. That's awesome. That's you as a complete human being. Your resume's goal, your resume's job is not represent the true you, the true complete you to the world. It's to present the commercial you, the part of you that works for a living for a company, and that's only a part of you. Your resume's job is to present a part of you to an employer in order to get an interview for a job that you can succeed in. So it's important to put away all these misconceptions about what a resume might be and really focus on what it is. So what is an effective resume? This is an effective resume. This is Stephanie Wozniak, I guess Steve Wozniak's sister. And we're going to go through in detail what makes this resume superior to the designed resume that's Google's top search result. So what's your future boss looking for? And what's she looking for on your resume? She's looking for someone who's looking for the job title she's looking to fill. I know it sounds obvious to you, but it's important that you convey and you communicate, hey, what job titles am I interested in? She's looking for someone who's achieved the type of results that she needs from her team. She's looking for someone who can communicate achievements professionally. Now, look, we're engineers here. We're not PR people. We're not marketers. We're not necessarily English majors. It doesn't mean that we have to write elegant poems or rap lyrics, but we do need to be able to communicate our achievements professionally. We do need to be able to communicate in the collaborative environment of modern engineering effectively. And she's looking for somebody who's a little bit better than all the other resumes in the pile. Typically, hiring managers looking through dozens, maybe up to 100 resumes for a tech position, and you need to be able to stand out just a little bit. So we'll talk about that. So looking for a job with this title, I know it's obvious to you, hey, I'm a software engineer level 2. It's obvious that I'm looking for jobs that are software engineer 3 or a senior software engineer. It's totally obvious to you. It's not obvious to anybody else. A recruiter, a hiring manager, an HR person met with somebody yesterday with the exact same background as you that actually wanted to do something completely different. And that happens. I see it happen all the time. As a result, you need to be very explicit about what it is that you're looking to do and why. So going to Stephanie's resume, she uses her professional headline. I'm an accomplished lead engineer. And then 4 job titles that she'd accept: senior site reliability engineer, lead DevOps engineer, senior DevOps, head of DevOps. That conveys to the audience, to hiring managers, to HR, here's what you ought to think about me for when you're looking for somebody to hire for roles like senior site reliability engineer. Now, most of your resume, all of your resume is really an advertisement that's pitched towards, here's what I would like to do next. Couple of exceptions. You really need to be precisely accurate in your past job titles. Was just reading something on a Reddit forum last night about a guy who had lied about his the job titles that he had, and that was causing him problems in his background check. Some of the very few things that companies check in background check are, did they have this title? Did they have this degree? Super important for you to be precisely accurate in your past job titles. So for example, Stephanie here could say, hey, maybe she was at Twitter when, and this is not a real person, by the way. It's a made up resume. So yeah, maybe she was one of the first, if she was the only person in DevOps at Twitter in New York in January 2011, she might say, hey, I was kind of like head of DevOps in New York. So I'm just going to put head of DevOps in there. If it wasn't your title, if it wasn't on the offer letter, if it wasn't in your promotion paperwork, don't use it. You got to be precisely specific. Same thing with your degree, any degree from a university. If it was a Bachelor of Arts in History of Technology, you can't change that into a Bachelor of Science Technology. You need to be precisely specific about titles and degrees. So your future boss is looking for someone who achieved results that are like the results that she's looking for from her team. Really important that you don't copy and paste your job description into your resume. If they're looking to hire somebody, if your future boss is looking to hire a senior software engineer, she doesn't need to know what your job description was as a junior engineer or as a software engineer level 2. She's kind of familiar overall with what job descriptions or job roles like that sound like. So you shouldn't copy and paste your job description. Instead, you should demonstrate what you achieved with the technology that you know. So on Stephanie's resume, she's listed top achievements in her professional summary: exceeded goals, reduced downtime, promoted 6 times. Each bullet point should be an achievement, not a duty or responsibility from your job description. But here is something that I did that the company or my team was better as a result of my having been there. Achievements should comprise about 50% of your resume as opposed to 25% on Tabitha's resume. And technologies are not enough. They're important. You've definitely got to list all your technologies. But for your future boss who's looking through dozens or hundreds of resumes, they're seeing every other resume has JavaScript and MySQL and things of that nature on it. So you're not really going to be able to stand out on your technology knowledge necessarily, but you're going to be able to stand out on what you did with that technology. So it's important for you to view each of these bullet points as a chance to say, here's what I achieved, here's what I did with my technology knowledge. Your future boss is looking for somebody who can communicate achievements, and that means communicating with data, not hand wavy, vague exaggerations. And really that means communicating with numbers. You're an engineer, you're a scientific, rational, systems focused human being. Please use numbers when you're talking about what you've achieved. So rather than worked on site load time, that's just not as effective as decreased site load time from 700 milliseconds to 322 milliseconds. So achievements are denominated in numbers. In this case, in Stephanie's resume, she writes, delivered 25 application pipelines. As a sales engineer, hey, secured 17.3 million in new business, trained staff, reduced AWS costs, etc. For folks in the JavaScript community, that might be reducing load time, reducing latency, increasing engagement, supporting more concurrent users, things of that nature. So numbers show what you've achieved for your team and your company. And I know one of the next things you're going to think is, man, it's tough to think about numbers. I don't necessarily have numbers hanging around. Overall, your resume needs somewhere between 10 bullets if you only have 2 years experience, up to 25 bullets if you got 20 years experience. So we're talking 2 to 4 bullet points per year. Thinking back over your experience, were there 2 things that you did in a year that the team was better off because you were there to do those? I still know that that's tough and that's not necessarily tripping off your tongue or something readily available. But if you think and you really think through, hey, what did I do? I think you can find 1 or 2 or 3 bullets per year that show here's why the team or the company was better because I was there. Numbers also give a sense of scale. This is a different resume if Stephanie says, I reduced AWS costs by 100 grand, or I reduced AWS costs by 3 million or 20 million. And then she's looking for somebody who's a little bit better. So the time to shine a little bit is being explicit about promotions and including any external validation. So Stephanie here's included 4 capabilities that qualify her for the jobs above. Hey, I understand infrastructure design, disaster recovery, CI/CD automation, etc. Be explicit about promotions. Promotions are a important signal that the people that you worked with before liked you and thought you did well and wanted to get you to the next level. Sometimes engineers or technologists, I've seen resumes, I've talked to clients at Leet who say they've got 8-year experience and their current job title is senior software engineer, and they've just got the 8 years experience, and maybe it's even right out of college. Hey, I don't think you graduated from college and got a senior software engineer job. What happened? And they'll explain, yeah, well, I got 4 promotions over the last eight years. But yeah, what's really just important is I'm a senior software engineer. Maybe, but maybe not. What's really important is your company repeatedly thought that you had what it takes to get to the next level and repeatedly promoted you. So be explicit about promotions and include any awards, honors, or anything that's external validation. Anytime that somebody outside of yourself, outside of your family has said something nice about you or given you some award or indicated something great about you, include those on your resume because those are important for standing out. So just a review, and then we'll get into to Q&A. So on the left is Google's top search result. On the right is an actual effective technical resume. This should warm the hearts of all software engineers and technologists everywhere. This is one of the only marketing exercises or advertising exercises in the entire world where the boring, straightforward, no flash, no fancy formatting version is actually the superior version of the document. If you could just make sure that you mute maybe Kashif and Amas, thank you. So review, the good technical resume is simpler. It scans better. People scan these days, they don't read. It's data driven. It's focused on achievements, not format. And it's numbers heavy. That's what a great technical resume is. The criticisms of it, of course, are, hey, it's boring, monochrome, and predictable. but we'll take those criticisms. Readers, both humans and the computer systems that read resumes, prefer boring, monochrome, predictable. And if you think about this in your own life, if you're ordering off of Seamless or Yelp, if you're using Street Easy to find an apartment, you want the format for Yelp or for Seamless or for Street Easy to be boring and predictable. Like, you know exactly where to find the information. You don't want that every time that you look at a different listing.
Continue sharing my screen.
Hey, we've got, yep. You don't want every listing that you look at to be different format, different color, different fonts. You want the format to be boring and predictable. You want the content to be interesting. Hey, I'd love that apartment, or hey, I'd like to order from this restaurant, but you want the format to be predictable. And so that's what a great technical resume is. So again, great technical resume for 2021. It's achievements, not job descriptions on your resume. Numbers, please use numbers. And a boring format with compelling bullet points is best. Again, we're Leet Resumes. We do free resume talks and free resume rewrites for experienced engineers at leetresumes.com. Thank you very much for having me. You can reach me at Cenedella on Twitter or at Leet Resumes. And I would love to take your questions. Thank you.
For that, thank you so much, Mark, for that. I think it was super, super helpful.
Great. And I see chat has filled up. And also, if you want to unmute yourself and ask, you can also do that. So I'm looking for a job. I'm a senior front end, currently in the job market. All right. Thanks, Johnny. Fawad, where do we actually get hard numbers? Lots of my experience is developing at new applications at startup. What numbers make sense there? So, for whatever you were developing, why are you developing it? Oftentimes companies have OKRs now. If your company had OKRs, quarterly or yearly OKRs, that can be very helpful to think about. Your OKRs would have been something like increasing engagement or improving concurrency or making the technology more usable in some measurable way. So you should, use the numbers that you are using to navigate or decide or prioritize you or your team's own work. There was some reason that you guys decided to do what you were doing. Follow that. And let me know if that makes sense. Johnny chimes in. User for application performance metrics, unit test coverage. That's a great one. Changing conversion numbers. That's great. As a recent boot camp grad for my first full-time engineering, how should I quantify the projects I worked on there? So look, my expertise is in experienced engineer's resume, 2+ years experience. Coming out of boot camp, coming out of university, coming out of grad school it's a different resume. Somewhat similar, but it's a different resume. Your education tends to be at the top. You're being hired less on what you have factually done in the last 2 to 4 years and more on what your promise is. So it's a different resume, and you really ought to focus on and follow either the boot camps or university career office guidance on what a great resume looks like for somebody coming out of your institution. How can we condense the experience into 2 or 3 bullet points? Asked Sultan. And should we, or where do we mention about the projects and their details, like project amount, client, etc.? So look, your resume's goal is to get you an interview. The specific client, might or might not really be that interesting. If there's a technical reason why it's interesting, then you can include the client either in the name or the type. But what you're trying to stand apart from, and particularly in like the first 6 to 8 bullet points, is here is the type of achievement that I've brought to teams before, and that's going to be interesting to you, whoever you are, hiring somebody at one level above where I am today. So part of that is you're thinking through what is the most interesting, what is the most technically challenging, what are the most compelling achievements that I've had, and prioritizing those. In a year, if you've got 11 or 14 or 20 things that you've achieved, you really need to think through, well, which ones of those are most impressive, and what are the numbers that come out of that are most impressive. If you did a whole series of things that were 7% improvement, 4% improvement, 5% improvement that were of moderate technical complexity, but then you did a couple that were 50 or 75% improvements of high technical complexity, those are going to be better. Now, look, a little bit this relies on your professional judgment for where you are in your career, and from talking to the people who are at a higher level at either your own firm or at a different firm, what types of things are interesting. You need to understand for your own field. And that prioritization is going to be important for you to think through. That's relevant for you and your career. I hope I answered that. Feel free to ask more. And should we, or where do we mention about, oh, we already covered that. Look, again, if it's helped Tesla develop their driverless driving system, then you can mention the client. If it's, worked for Blue Cross and Blue Shield, collating their insurance records across 10 million records, that might not be that compelling to mention Blue Cross or Blue Shield. Should the resume be short? How many pages max? So under 10 years of experience, it should be 1 page. Over 10 years of experience should be 2 pages, unless you're in an individual contributor role and that's all you want to do. I'm a software engineer level 2. I've been one for the last 8 years in my 10-year career. I'm happy being software engineer 2. I don't want to go to 3 or senior. I just want to stay 2. Then you can stick to 1. But other than that, it's 1 decade, 1 page. Over a decade, 2 pages. And if you only go to 3 pages if you're at the top of a Fortune 500 company or you're managing 1,000 people. So those are the guidelines. Underneath the main job title, asked Jamie, there's a list of 4 sub job titles that the person would also accept, right? And then that list was mixed. So a little bit beyond the confines of a 20-minute talk, but so what we have here is the top 4 titles are top 4 are job titles that you take. The next 4 are capabilities that show your ability to do those jobs. Next 4 are achievements that came from you having those capabilities. And then the next 4 are career highlights, is kind of our approach to creating a scannable resume that helps you stand out. Because again, your resume reader, as compared to, I don't think you can see my pointer. If you look at Tabitha's resume, that paragraph block at the beginning, enthusiastic software engineer of 4 years, what's the chance really as somebody reading resumes, you're going to get to the 4 sentence? It's pretty low. I know, I've done eye tracking studies. On this, it's okay. That top line. All right. So accomplished lead engineer. All right. I know something about who this person is. Next line, either yes, this is the type of person I'm looking for, or no. If I'm looking for, I'm looking for a junior site reliability engineer, I'm going to put Stephanie's resume aside. Okay. So now we've hooked them after the first line. The person reading your resume is looking for a senior site reliability engineer, and they know something about what they're looking for. So the next line of capabilities, hey, yeah, those are capabilities I'm looking for. Oh, and then they actually did this stuff. Each line is designed to kind of hook you in and get you to read the next line. So they did this type of stuff, and then, oh, wow. And the people that they work with thought they were great. And, those were their career highlights. That's fantastic. I'm ready to put this into the interview pile, or, the phone screen pile, or at the very least, I'm interested in reading more into the resume to find out. So that's that specific structure there. Great question, Jamie. Should there be a separator? we've decided no. One could get into a lot of split, counting angels on the head of the pin and splitting hairs over where lines go and where don't. We went with a sparse. We've gone with our standard format with a sparse formatting that simply helps separate the professional summary from work experience, from education, from your technology section, and the minimum amount of formatting required. Johnny says, understand the content matters. Same time, since an advertisement does may look good, don't you think? Yeah. I spend a lot of time with recruiters. None of them ever, I've been in the business 20 years. None of them ever had said, outside of design, if you're a design professional, it's different. Outside of design, never said, that resume stood out to me. It was great because of the colors and how that person formatted it. I hired that salesperson or I hired that engineer because of it. Nobody. Instead, as Shamoon was complaining about some resumes that, or somebody else is complaining early on the call, maybe it was Chris, about some resumes saw at university. Most recruiters bitterly complain about, I can't find the freaking information on the resume. So I know, to you, again, your experience is, if this is for me, I want it to look like Tabitha. Right? But you are not your audience. Oh, maybe it was Jamie that had the experience. You are not the customer. The customer of your resume really just wants to get through. All right, in the first 6 seconds, figure out, is this person at all, I'm looking for a NoSQL database engineer. Okay, I don't know how Stephanie got into my pile, but I'm not going to look at Stephanie for my database engineer role. Oh, I'm looking for a senior site reliability engineer. Great, this person's correct. They are really just looking to be able to scan quickly. And then when they find what's interesting, dig deeper, dig deeper, dig deeper, and then put you into the, I'm going to phone screen this person. I'm going to put this person in front of the hiring manager and say, hey, here's why you ought to talk to Stephanie. The attractiveness, I would say matters zero. I'd actually say it matters negative, because every time that people try to make their resume attractive, they tend to make it less readable, which harms you. Hope that's a decent answer, Johnny. Chris, over the years, worked on 60 projects using 60 technology, 24 areas. I can't see squeezing this into 2 or 3 pages. Got to squeeze it in 2 pages. So Chris, you're, if you want to come off of mute, I'm happy to chat too. The purpose of your resume is to get the interview. To the extent that you've got a project list that, hey, I can go through my long project list if you want in person, that's fine to have. But, a 2-page resume ought to be able to cover the summary of what somebody needs to know about you to decide whether or not they want to talk to you for 15 or 20 minutes on the phone and a phone screen.
Well, I've gotten it down to 3 pages as a functional resume, where I don't have it in chronological order, but broken up into sections by
do not
expertise.
do the functional resume. Do not do the functional resume. Please don't. You've been led astray, my friend. You've been led astray.
What?
You've been led astray. Do not do the functional resume. And for everybody else, a functional resume is where, instead of having your experience organized by year, you put together, here's my marketing experience, here's my database experience, here's my programming experience. Just the recruiting world just does not compute with that. So look, I did a long interview with the CEOs and technical experts of the top 5 resume parsing companies. It's a 4,000-word interview. And they have some comments on functional resumes. If you Google resume parser CEOs, my interview comes up first. Just don't do it. It doesn't work. It does not help you. It sets you back. And look, this comes from, so look, I run Leet Resumes, founded Ladders. still working with Ladders. Ladders, we've got 9 million members, focusing on 100K plus jobs across both tech and other areas. This comes from a lot of research and time spent working with recruiters. These aren't just flippant recommendations that we're making.
All right. I hope I can talk to you offline about some of the quirky things about my situation.
Yeah. Well, no, we can talk about them now. But look, so first off, everybody is unique and special. Absolutely true. Your resume will never reflect that. Your resume is a document designed to help you get an interview. And from that perspective, somebody going through 100 resumes, they're not really looking to find out what's quirky and different about you. They're looking for, should I phone screen this person or not? And you have to make it easy for them. Odd formats, functional formats, special things. And I've worked with thousands of people over the years. There is never a reason to, almost never a reason to vary from kind of standard formats.
Okay. Well, what about the cover letter? Because I usually have my cover letter.
Is this
what they're looking for?
Is this applying for a job as a consultant, or is this trying to land a client?
It's landing a client.
Well, look, that's so. Look, I'm specifically talking about this is for if you're applying for a job or you're going for an interview at a company that's going to hire you as a full-time contractor or W-2. Marketing for a role can be different. Not my specific area of expertise. Specific area of expertise is being hired for W-2s or being hired as a full-time contractor.
Okay.
Hope that makes sense.
All right, thanks.
Fawad asks, I hear people tell me under 10 years experience that I should feel free to use more than one page. Look, if you're 8, Fawad, if you want to go to voice, I'm happy to chat with you. Look, if you're 8+ and you've got like an amazing, some background that you want to share, yes, you can leak over past one page, maybe. But again, the goal of your resume is to get you an interview and then to be a guide while you're in the interview. For almost all folks, one page is sufficient to do that. Where would it not be? You graduated college at 21. You're now 30, so you're 9 years in, and you've worked 4 places with brand names, and you actually did kind of kick-ass work at each of them that's off the charts. You're at Facebook, Facebook, Google, Salesforce, and now you're at Uber, and each one you're doing something in kind of the flashy division. Yes, maybe we can go over to 2 pages in that case. Beyond that, 1 page is going to get you what you need, which is for somebody that I'm looking to hire as a lead engineer, senior software engineer, maybe on the cusp of staff engineer in some cases. Do they have impressive enough experience in the last 5 years for me to put them into the please call pile? Now, beyond 10 years, what they're looking for is, and so why do you go to 2 pages? So when you go to 2 pages, you're really looking at first page is now covering, call it last 7 years in some greater bit of depth. You've reached a level of expertise and experience and insight that means that you really ought to be driving more impressive accomplishments. So when you go to 2 pages, that first page of this last 7 years is going to have 12 bullet points that really ought to be pretty seriously impressive in terms of the numbers that you moved or the things that you achieved with your team. And then that second page, bottom third to bottom half, will be covered by education and technologies. And that top half will be, the next 3 to 10 years of experience, 3 to 10 plus years of experience. So those are the cases when you go to 2-page resumes. But for typical, hey, I've got eight years of experience, there's really no need to go beyond 1 page. Again, I know your experience is, I've definitely done more than 1 page of work in my life. Totally get it. It's not about you. It's about your future boss and how can you explain to them succinctly and concisely why they ought to be interested in hiring you. And for people under 10 years of experience, you really ought to be able to do that in under a page. Let's see, would this format apply to all industries, like construction, logistics, asked Sultan? All industries. Well, if you're a tech person, this format applies to anybody within tech. It's a similar story for sales, marketing, etc. Outside of technology in those fields, sales, marketing, finance, the technology section at the end really tends to be something different. Technology is not as important outside of technology sector. The overall concept is the same. And if you have a friend or spouse that might be looking to write a resume, it's not technological, you can Google Cenedella high score resume. That's my best advice on generically what's a great resume look like. Or you can buy my book on Amazon for $5. Thanks for great. What do you think about white space? Should we fill up every line to reduce white space? My experience in general is that once you get going, people tend to write too much, and then it's cutting back is the important thing. We don't typically see a problem among folks. Once they get going on writing down their experience, it's usually cutting back. But Stephanie's resume here, she wouldn't want to have a lot more white space than this. She wouldn't want her lines to be shorter. But in most cases, what we see is that people end up writing too much rather than too little. Sultan asked, do we reflect our work experience outside the U.S. as well? Yes, please. And your education outside the U.S. Was working with somebody last week. Works in defense in D.C., 21 years experience, had graduated from a school in sub-Saharan Africa with a bachelor's degree in 1999. But when he submitted his resume to me, he didn't have education on it. And, there's, call it 5% of technologists haven't gone to college, which is fine. It's totally fine. And I just confirmed, hey, just want to confirm you did not go to college because there's nothing on your degree. Said, oh, no, yes, I graduated from the University of such and such with a bachelor in linguistics in 1999. It's like, look, you got to tell me that you need to inform your school background, because if you don't have it, then people are going to assume that you didn't go to college. It's not a uniform challenge, but neither is that a uniform easy pass for every hiring manager. Happy to take other questions. But if not, again, look, so you can do this yourself. You can also go to the blog, leetresumes.com/blog. I've got a lot of advice on there on how to do it, or you can have us do it for you. We write experienced engineers' resumes for free at Leet. And I don't know, Shamoon, if you have any wrap-up comments.
No, I think that was awesome, Mark. Seriously, that was super helpful. Thank you so much for all the great questions, everybody. I'll send this out to the group at large.
Awesome.
Looking forward to getting in touch. I might hit you up for my own resume.
Terrific.
And thanks.
Really appreciate you arranging this. Thank you, everybody, for being such a great audience. Great questions. Thanks very much. And we'll see you around.
Absolutely.
Twitter handle again is, let me just get that. Twitter handle is Cenedella, and it's leetresumes.com. And you can go to the blog, leetresumes.com/blog. I think works.
And I'll put those out as well in the follow-up email to everybody. Thanks so much, everybody.
Terrific. Thank you, everybody.
Have a great night.